Good morning, kids. It is bright and early on a Wednesday morning.
Welcome back to the shop. In our last video, we went ahead and finished up that center panel. And today we're gonna be working on doing our mitered border. You can see we've already gone ahead and milled up and glued up our two-toned outer boards for our border. And if you're curious on how to learn that, check out our previous series on how to S4S lumber and how to glue a panel. It's the same thing, we're just gluing a small piece to a big piece for that accent color. Now when we glue this up, we're actually gonna be using dominoes on the joints. And if you watched our previous series, you saw that we didn't use dominoes on the center panel. And the reason for that is I'm not worried about the expansion and contraction because it's expanding and contracting in the same direction. Now when we do our bordered ends, these are expanding, contracting in a different way than these ends. So what I like to do is go ahead and put dominoes in to lock everything in together. If you've ever done a breadboard end table and made sure that the ends were sanded smooth, where that breadboard comes up right here, you go back a year later and a lot of the times you'll feel a slight difference in between the boards, and that's because they do expand and contract in different directions at different rates. Now since we've already gone ahead and glued up all our outer boards, our next step is we just need to make these a little bit smoother. We got a little bit of a height difference in between them, and I want to make sure they're matched up to the panel thickness that we're gluing it to. It just makes things a little bit easier. So let's get to it. All right, so we got our pieces flattened up. We're over at the chop saw, and you're gonna need a square and a pen. While the saw does have 45-degree increments on it, I've always found that it's not the most accurate, so I usually like to go ahead and draw out where my 45 is so I can fine-tune it from there. We know we want this on the inside by the interior panel, so the wraparound goes like that, so we want to make sure our 45 tucks like this. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that out to here. Just going to make that mark there. This is just to make sure that I'm on my 45 degrees because I don't trust the saw to ever be there. All right, so let's get the board in place. Go ahead and bring it out to 45 and just gonna do a little spot check. I'm gonna walk the blade and make sure, and yeah, it's a little bit off, so I actually need to just take the detents off. I need to come a little outside of 45. That's good enough. So now that we got that first mark cut, I'm going to go ahead and take it back over to the panel so that way we can line up this on that inside corner of the panel. We can take our pen, make a mark, and that's where we know where that other 45 has to start and gets us a good starting point. I usually like to cut it just a smidge long because I'd rather walk that cut in by taking a half a blade and getting it perfect than trying to make it perfect from the start and being a little short, because once you do that, there's no going back. All right, so now that we got this over here, I've got Jake down here holding that with that 45 right at the corner. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and make my mark right there. Even with a little note to make sure I don't mess up which way that goes. So something I've always had a hard time with is once you get your mark there, you know, we know this is where that 45 has to perfectly meet right there, but I can't exactly walk the blade there without cutting into the wood. So this is why I always had a philosophy is, you know, look above the blade, and I'm gonna purposely make my first cut farther out, so that way I can gauge where I'm at, and then just slide the board in that far and get it right on. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can see I'm a little bit off, so I'm gonna use that as my gauge, shimmy the board forward. If you notice on here, this cut looks like it's pretty close right there, but that little bit is gonna cause your other board that's gonna meet up like this, it's gonna push that away and it's gonna cause a gap right there on that panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the step to just shave that little bit off. But just because it looks like that much, you don't want to move the blade over that much because then you'll actually be past that. So I'm just gonna barely put the blade over that line, make one more cut and clean it up. Now you can see that cut goes right to the tip of that mark, which is exactly what we want. In fact, on the back side where I made my little line, I can just barely see on some of that frayed wood where that line was, which is good because if you can still see the line, you're that much farther than where you want to be, because obviously I can't make a mark behind the board that I'm measuring against. So we actually want the line to just barely disappear. All right, so we got the boards up here. Focus. All right, so you see we are right off that joint right there. And let's come over here. Out of the way, shadow. And come on, focus. Right on it. So that's where we made our mark, right up the backside there. And like I said, you know, I could just barely see that pen mark, and you don't want to see the whole pen mark because then your pen mark's away from where you want to be. But you also don't want to go past that because then you're more than what you want to take off. Something like that. Anyways, go ahead and do the same thing for all these, all the way around. And as long as you get it that tight, it'll be pretty good. So I've already went and made all my 45 cuts except for this last one right here. And I wanted to make a point to show you this. I've already marked it. And basically, I don't want to move the saw because we already spent some time making sure that that was a perfect 45 over there. And I don't want to keep swinging that thing left and right. And I can't cut this on that other side without flipping it over. But the only way how I marked this, I wouldn't say it's the only way, but how I marked it was the wrong side. So let's go ahead and transfer that line over so that way we can actually see it on the correct side. Just gonna go ahead and bring that line from that side up and around. Then transfer it up right over here. Cool. Now that we got that done, we're gonna go ahead and start making our marks for our dominoes. We need to start by making sure that these corners are perfectly lined up. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start making my marks for the domino to go across. Oh yeah, that's why I have this here. So I can get a nice straight line going across. And we're gonna go like every 6 inches or so. Okay, and we got to make sure we got the right size dominoes, and the current bid on this is number 12s. Before we actually start cutting these, I just want to go ahead and make all my dominoes. One of the many reasons I don't like Festool is because their track saw has inch marks on it, but then the domino has millimeters, and last time I checked, 2-time World War champ, so freedom units. I think what we're going to do, I don't know, we'll do 80 millimeters. I never trust factory in, so I usually like to just shave that little bit off to make sure it's what I want it. Now, I've been using the first one that I've made this whole time because I don't want to keep using the last one I made because I may be a little off and it's gonna compound every time, and all of a sudden I don't have 80 millimeters anymore. So I always keep this one nearby. Get our board set up. This just helps it from wobbling around too much. This one is good to go. Now we got to get set up for these down here. So from here, all we got to do is pop these clamps off, get the new ends put on. We already got the Domino's hole drilled, and use pipe clamps because we got to go, instead of just about 4 feet that way, we have to go about 7 feet this way. Generally, pipe clamps are a lot easier to do with that. So let's get started. One of the many reasons I do prefer pipe clamps is because you're not limited on length. If you need longer clamps, go get a longer pipe. And you just take your stuff off. You know, there's that rule of put glue on both joints, but this stuff's so dang thick that we just slather it on there. I usually like to dip the Dominoes in and tap these in on the dry side, because I can't tap it in. Get in there. And we just make sure that we get some of that adhesive down in those holes so it grabs onto the other side. So unsure. Thanks for watching today's video. In our next one, what we're going to be doing is going over proper sanding technique and also putting an edge profile on this bad boy. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave us a like and a comment below. Hit that bell icon for notifications and that subscribe button so that way you can keep up to date with all the how-to videos and cool things we got going on here in the shop. We'll see you next time.